Hello and welcome to Pitching In, the story podcast that explores the difference between taste and expertise. I'm Christian Barrett, and today we have part 2 of our Breakfast Club episode, wherein myself, Ryan Woosnam and Jane Raitt pitch our sequels and spin-offs to the 1985 teen dramedy. Alright, so let's jump into the second half of the show. We're in the second half of our Breakfast Club episode, and as you might know that in Pitching In we pitch either a sequel or a prequel or a spin-off or something to the movie that we've been reviewing for that episode. So today we're going to be doing that for the Breakfast Club. And let's just very briefly say whether we are doing a spin-off, a sequel, before we dive into our pitches for Breakfast Club. What are you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing a sequel.
Cool.
Because it's playing it safe, I think, but it hasn't had as you say, there was going to be sequels, so I thought there's no point doing a prequel. It doesn't really exist. There's no point doing a TV series.
Man, what would be the point of a prequel? You could do a prequel with Vernon, maybe.
Yeah, but I'm not interested in that.
No.
Also, it wouldn't work for a series for Netflix or anything like that. I think a straight up, if you're going to, for this modern time, if we want to get people back on board to actually be interested to watch it, it kind of needs a reboot, which is, a prequel reboot to a degree. And we would need to bring forward characters in that were more modernised for the new audience of kids, because they probably look at, like I said, that's an 80s film, so they look at those characters and go, that doesn't really resonate with us now.
Even though the Brunch Club.
Yeah, the Brunch Club. But I'm just going to say straight up sequel, play it safe. That's me. Yeah.
Cool. I'm doing a sequel.
Sequel.
It's straight after.
Okay. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
I'm doing a sequel, but it's kind of a spin-off sequel.
Cool.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Because I started off wanting to do a straight sequel, and I just found it way too much to manage.
Yep.
And I kept bumping into what I was talking about before, where I didn't quite get how they were doing what they were doing. So instead of trying to do a straight sequel that kind of mirrored the tone and storytelling form of the original, I was like, no, I don't really know how to do that storytelling form yet, if I ever will. So instead, I decided to do a spin-off that fits my storytelling style a bit more.
Just strength, where you've got strength.
Probably. Just basically because I was running out of time. I'm like, I don't know what to do, so I just finished it this morning, trying to get it done.
As we all do, putting each other under pressure with these wonderful pitches, particularly when you
an idea. It's not the idea.
Of course, exactly. Well, I have, like I said, and I got 75% of the way through my previous pitch before I bailed on it. I had storytelling. I had stories all mapped out for 3.5 of the 5 main characters in a sequel situation down the track, and I was happy with all those, but I couldn't get the last 2 to work, and I couldn't get them to all work together. And I was just like, that's too much. My brain's going to explode.
Well, I've chucked together the concept, and I've chucked in these characters in there, but I haven't overly developed them, because I think for a pitch I don't want to go too much into their personal. I'm going to give you a little bit about them.
That's what I thought.
You're not going to get a lot.
It was blowing my pitch out. I'd already done like 4 pages, and I was like, it's going to be way too long.
For me, if I was writing, I would probably... I would develop those characters early on, obviously, and have them ready to go before they got into the script, whereas I feel like I'm just working on a pitch blindly. I don't have the time to develop 5 characters before I hit this.
I'm just telling a story in mind, so hopefully you get enough of a taste of the characters.
Who would like to go first? I don't mind. I'm happy to go first.
I wouldn't mind going first, but
you go first then. Go for it.
Come on, you're the number 9.5. We need to.
Okay. Well, that's why there's a lot of pressure, and like I said, it's just a story. Enjoy it.
No, I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Let's try and get into the
world.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And a glass shattered. It's all right.
It's morning. All right.
Okay.
Yep. Brian rides his bike into school. It's early morning and not many kids are in the hallways. Brian puts letters in selected lockers discreetly, looking around, hoping nobody sees him. John Bender, arrives at school. Brian notices him and quickly tries to feed the letter into John's locker, but nervously fails. John swipes it from his hands. It's addressed to the Breakfast Club. Brian runs off. John casually takes out a flick knife and opens the letter. It's called a flick knife, right? Cut to Alison arriving with Andrew. Alison is back wearing her goth look, and Andrew is now also dressed in goth. They get out of his car and walk into school arm in arm. Claire walks in holding a birthday cake. She walks up behind John and whispers, "Happy birthday." John turns around with a sarcastic, excited look on his face and says, "Wow, my first birthday cake." Claire replies, "You serious?" John's dad's tradition on his birthday was to get him to blow out the ash on his cigarettes. Claire asks what he's reading. John explains that Brian is running around committing locker federal offence. Cut to Andrew noticing a letter in his locker addressed to the Breakfast Club. Cut to Alison also finding a letter in her locker. Cut to Brian in some kind of storeroom setting a table with foam cups, a flask of coffee, plate of bagels with cream cheese. Andrew and Alison, confused, walk in with Claire. Brian officially welcomes them to the Breakfast Club. There isn't a great reception. Brian explains that he came up with the idea of the Breakfast Club as an opportunity to continue the connection the group had at Saturday's detention.
Yeah.
They're not impressed.
Oh.
He explains that what happened to him has had a big effect on his life and brought new meaning for him. The group still aren't impressed and they're not sure what's going on. He explains to them that something amazing happened to him and could happen for them. He goes on to say before that he was really struggling with constant negative thoughts about himself. He often thought of different ways of killing himself, but since that day he's been able to see the value in himself and that there actually is light at the end of the tunnel. He thinks it will benefit all of them if they could meet early before school to talk in a trusting environment about their troubles and day-to-day stresses. He gets an eye roll reception. It tries to sell it as free therapy. And then he proposes they open the Breakfast Club to new members down the track, people who are struggling with their lives, people who have been bullied by other kids, struggling with pressure of study, social status, self-esteem, depression, and suicide like he did. Brian is sure if his life can be turned around like it was in one weekend for him, that they could have a huge positive impact on other kids in the school. He thinks the group should be kept secret from the teachers and parents so the kids feel comfortable about opening up. The group at first is very reluctant and John doesn't even show up. But once Brian gets the others on side to help, Claire manages to get John in. They all agree to meet before school, not before long. Their sessions are just a group of friends catching up and the dynamic resembles the way it did at the first Saturday detention. After a while, Alison introduces a girl she met and she spent some time in a psych ward with her, Nadia. Nadia has just come out of a long stint in hospital after attempting to take her own life. Brian welcomes her to the group and explains that it's an open, non-judgmental, supportive environment where your secrets are safe. No parents or teachers are allowed. It takes Nadia a couple of sessions to open up, but after a while Nadia reveals that she was recently in a relationship with a teacher at the school. It had been going on for a year. He broke up with her recently and started dating her best friend. When she found out, she tried to end her life. She was placed in a special program at the hospital, but she never opened up to anyone about the relationship there. Nadia doesn't want to come forward to the school with this information, but now the group are faced with this dilemma of whether or not they should report the teacher in case it happens to somebody else. They give her their word and decide to keep it a secret. John and Andrew have a regular class with this teacher, and after hearing Nadia's story, they struggle to even look at him in the class the next day. The teacher comments on John's attitude towards him, and John bites back. When the teacher tells John to get out of his class, John stands over him and threatens to kill him. Andrew holds John back. John pushes Andrew off and walks out. John is expelled from the school immediately. The next day at their Breakfast Club meeting, Claire tries to convince Nadia to report the teacher. Nadia refuses and leaves the room. That afternoon, Nadia's ex-best friend, so Freya, who's now dating the teacher, approaches Brian and asks if he has seen Nadia. Brian hasn't seen her for days. He tells Freya to join their Breakfast Club chat. And no, I'm lost. Oh, yep. They let her know that they know what's going on between her and this teacher. Freya then goes on to confess that she's now pregnant with the teacher's baby and that he has stopped talking to her since she told him. She tells them that he called her a liar and refuses to believe the baby is even his. Alison tells her she believes her and then reveals that she too had a relationship with this teacher and also fell pregnant with his baby, and he reacted the same way. This is the first Andrew has heard about this and leaves, so he gets up and leaves the room. Alison tries to convince Freya that they need to report him or it'll just keep happening. Alison and Claire go to Nadia's house to see if they can find her. Nadia's mum opens the door and is relieved that she has some friends there to cheer her up. Alison and Claire talk to Nadia about the teacher, but Nadia has no intentions of reporting him in fear of what people are going to think of her. Brian is getting ready to leave for school the next morning. His mum gets off the phone and asks him if he knows a girl called Freya from school. Brian asks why. His mum explains that she was found dead in her bed. Brian runs out the door. He arrives at Freya's house, but there's no answer. He rides to school, opens his locker. There's a letter addressed to the Breakfast Club. It's from Freya. He waits for the group to arrive. Nadia finally shows up. The letter left in the locker is from Freya and is addressed to the principal of their high school. Freya's written down all the details of her relationship with the teacher. She's also included photos of the two of them together and printouts and emails of texts between them. Cut to Alison and Claire walking into the principal's office with Nadia to report him. Cut to the teacher's arrest. Cut to a few weeks later, Brian is speaking at a student council meeting requesting a reconsideration of John Bender's expulsion. In addition, he puts to the student council that he'd like to create the official support group to help other kids at their school struggling with pressure and any kind of hardship. He announces that the group will be called the Breakfast Club and will be open to school kids every morning before school. His group is approved by the school. Cut to the Breakfast Club's first official session. Okay, this is where it gets a little cheesy. They open the doors and there's a big crowd of students waiting to enter. First in line, John Bender. In typical John style, he struts in and tells Brian he made him something for the club. He shoves a box in Brian's hand. Brian opens the box. It's full of pins for all the members of the Breakfast Club. The logo on the pin is a fist pump in the sky.
Yeah.
The camera pans over to the picture of Freya and then end.
Huh.
That's where I'm
That's
at.
cool. See, okay, so I like that. As it got towards the end, it reminded me of it's like the story of the Avengers. Do you know what I mean? Where
Yeah,
it's like
well,
so the whole
haven't
movie.
seen it, but yes.
The whole movie is. Oh, you haven't seen it?
No.
You haven't seen
wow.
the Avengers?
No.
The superhero movie, The Avengers.
No.
The new one?
Okay, that's okay. So basically, the basic story is of a group of disparate heroes who, at the very beginning, somebody says we should be a group together, and they all go, I don't know. And then one of the characters keeps fighting to bring them together. And then by the end, just before the end, there's like some loss that makes them go, oh, it's not just about us. We really need to be together to generate this new idea of how we need to help people in general. And I feel like that was like, yours was like the student counselling version of forming a team that really need to be formed, but that so many people were reluctant to, and there's all these, put all these obstacles in their way, and even themselves, the team who are trying to form the bigger team themselves, they keep stuffing it up and sabotaging it a bit. But then, like, Brian keeps trying, and then with Freya, it was Freya who died?
Yes.
With Freya's death, I was like, I couldn't remember if Freya or Nadia, but Nadia's the one who survived when Freya died.
One was called Natalie and one was called Nadia, and that was confusing.
Oh,
Thanks,
sorry.
No,
Okay.
no, meaning I changed the name.
Oh, okay.
Confusing myself.
That is very weird.
Okay, I'm glad you did that.
But I like that. So because it gave me that same kind of sense of like, oh yes, like, this idea of forming a team for the betterment of others, but the team itself needs to sort out their issues first. Like I really, I like that.
But it had
That's
very
cool.
much the sequel.
It felt very grounded.
The sequel
Despite what you
element.
said was like the cheesy element. I think it felt like a realistic turn
Couple
of
of
events.
rewrites, yeah.
Well, I had the sequel element of creating the world bigger. Because the first film is all sort of them just in the library together and sitting there. You've followed it on pretty much straight away, and then you've expanded their universe. So we've not just seen them all sitting together in one room. We've seen them at Brian's house. We've seen them all sort of slightly separated as well. So they're fragmented. Their conversation will be more fragmented, as in they're not all sitting in each other's zone.
Yeah.
So that's the sequel style of like, really going. Let's open
And it
it
felt
out.
like a comfortable extension to me.
Well, it
The
answers,
rest of the world made sense. The rest of the world to me.
and it
was
answered
good.
a lot of the questions or the stuff that's in the first one. You've answered a lot of them, and you've said this is what they've done to fix that stuff. So I like that element as opposed to just going, stuff all that. We don't care about the first one.
Yeah.
We're just going to
I
a big
also
party
like-
and they're all on the piss and they're all mates. And
I also like when you said you had those moments that were reminiscent of the first film, but it wasn't as if they were great friends the whole way through and everything
No.
was fine.
Yeah.
Like, it felt more realistic and organic. Like, they were still trying to... It was just the beginning of their friendship and they were still trying to figure it out. And it's almost like at the end of the film, when they've formed this proper club, they're properly friends. Not just this kind of like spend a day being friends.
There's
It's
a bit
like
of substance.
Yeah. It's like deepened their
well, it answers
connection.
because the question I think you asked, will they be friends? Like that answers it. That someone asked before, and this is a great way to look at it for pitching in, is to see if they would be friends and have a bit of a play around with that concept.
And would you say that... Because to me that feels very much like it's... So Brian is your in. Brian is your inroad.
Yeah.
He's
the
a character whose journey where he's pushing, basically. He's pushing through
I think he's
this-
quite powerful.
Yeah.
That would come later in life for him in his 30s, but it is a way for him. I think it's just a simple fact that he didn't have friends that he could really
Yeah.
talk to. He had
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
like academic friends. He didn't have real people to realise that he wasn't the only.
And he took a lot away
Person
from that
facing.
moment.
I like the idea that. Sorry, you took.
I was going to say, he took a lot away from that moment,
Yeah.
for being in that moment with those people,
Which is
particularly in
typical
that
Ryan.
first film, because when he writes that thing at the end on behalf of everyone, it actually resonates really strongly with him. So
And he's able to
be
articulate.
That's right. He would be the one that would push that.
Yeah.
And what I
to be
like
together.
is because I was giggling when you were talking about how him first presenting it to them, and I'm like,
Yeah.
they would just be like,
They're
this
just
is
like,
so
this is just so
dumb. Like, what are you
stupid.
talking about? And then I love the idea that when we first had that, in that first part of the story, everyone watching it just be like, oh, Brian, you're a bit embarrassing, mate.
Yeah, this is.
But then at the end, we're like, no, he's right. We do need that.
Yeah.
It might feel silly, but look at the alternative. It's people commit,
And you
terrible things
cover
happening.
more, like
And that in itself
what is the
a,
depression
of
and the
course,
suicide rate.
but that in
high
itself,
school.
that's a really good thing to do in a story because you've taken the audience from the perspective. So at the beginning, the audience is like, "Dude, Brian, you're a bit embarrassing." At the end, they're like, "Go, Brian!
Yeah.
You're doing it, mate. You've convinced us."
Dance like nobody's watching.
Dance
Yeah.
like nobody's watching. Yeah,
Well, I
that's
think,
good.
And I think that nowadays, like those self-help groups and that are more prevalent in schools anyway. So
Yeah.
there's a real driving force now for people, for young guys people
not
to
be
express
judged
them.
by a
That's
grown-up.
right, but to get together if they're having problems. Back in the 80s and that would have been, no one would have done it.
You would
Yeah.
have had a
So,
principal and a nun.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
that
cool.
would be
Well, there's a lot of
nice.
self-help
That was
groups
good.
and
I think
yeah.
so.
I like that.
Yeah.
Felt a little
I liked it because it
funky,
rolls.
and I was a bit uncomfortable,
Oh,
but I
No,
had
of course,
to present
of
it.
course,
and
of course.
that's
No, I
where-
liked it. It was good. It felt, like all the things we just said. It felt like it matched. It was like that's the kind of thing that I wouldn't be confident trying to do because I
definitely am not confident.
I think-
Well, but it
Definitely
felt
putting
good.
myself
I
out
think
there.
right.
I think the
It's-
fact that
it's-
Jane
it's
knows the
expanded my
film well
perspective, yeah.
and is at 9 and you love the characters
Yeah.
and the concept, it's very comfortable for you to go. More like I wasn't comfortable to attach onto that because I wouldn't have the ability to really, like I said, I'm a 7, probably haven't watched it for maybe 2 years or something, but I could kind of follow on with it and try what you did, but it didn't feel.
I
like
didn't
it was
feel like I
something-
could be true enough to it.
That's exactly
Yeah.
that's what I'm
I
trying to
felt like
say.
you
I
had-
felt
No,
like
you
James
were
is
true.
truer to it than what probably the two of us
That's very
feel
cool.
like we could be. Yeah.
Um,
Cool. All right, me.
Do you want me to go? Or do you?
I'll go then, because
Yeah.
yours is a spin-off, right? So mine's
It
a
is.
sequel. So
Yes,
yours
you-
sequel, I'm a
sequel,
sequel,
mine's a
sequel,
spin-off.
and I'll try my best
Go
here.
for it.
So this is on my phone, so hopefully I can read it correctly. I don't have glasses, but I probably should. I called this.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Do you have a name for yours?
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't. I would,
Okay, that's okay. So if you think about before the end, sorry,
Yeah,
to
I
interrupt
will.
you,
I'll
right?
have
That's all right. The Breakfast Club, Brian's story. I don't know.
Yeah.
Mine's just
Real
called
British, okay.
TBC.
Hey, that's
cool.
that's how I
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So TBC, because
No.
I think we like to make everything nowadays in acronyms and that. Anyway, like shut them down, I thought it's modern lingo. So,
to be confirmed.
yeah, that's right. So, and the Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
So it begins with a female narration of a diary entry. One that is, it's kind of, I did hang around the suicide thing a little bit because I think it's an important element to it.
Definitely.
One that is all about a person's last day on earth, why life is painful, their existence is futile, and their mindset very fragile. This is their swan song to the world, a final goodbye on what they have learned and endured over 16 years of life. Moving on, Sherma High has been closed for 10 years. Poor government funding of public schools and new state-of-the-art high school build up the road has made it redundant. It has sat for years being coated in dust, festering mould in the ceiling, hosting spiders. The grounds are now full of weeds and not a single underpaid groundskeeper to pull them. It has become a place for squatters, gangs to spray paint their creeds and randy destructive teens to frequent when the day tumbles into the night. It is set for demolishing and a new wanky high-rise apartment is about to take its place. As a little callback, the company is owned by Brian Johnson, the brain. So he owns it, so there'll be some banners and stuff of him. You'll see him around. Guy went on to make money as an architect, like those in the know, always knew he would. We always knew he'd go on and do big stuff. Enter our new Breakfast Club, 5 modern-day misfits facing their own personal struggles. Tom's the bullish stockbroker wannabe, pressurised by his father, chases Neil, an online troll, into an abandoned building or into the abandoned school, offering a bully-style beatdown because Neil isn't up to scratch in his eyes and as a human and has been undermining him with every chance with silly memes and Snapchat. So he's basically just picking on this guy at school, this sort of nerdier guy. He's picking on this sort of bullish guy, making fun of him, and it's chasing him down there. Neil is chased through the building, and we get a nice little moment where we get heartening back to the school and the way it was in the 80s original. Spray painted on one of the walls is TBC, the Breakfast Club, and a few other things. I was thinking like something about the principal, whatever his name is. Yeah, fuck Vernon, and that'd be quite funny.
But yeah.
Yeah. So some of that stuff be funny. And so then we've got Sarah has received a text off Luke, and the two of them are meeting up in the building. Their relationship is on the rocks. Their parents don't think they're good for each other. It's a Romeo Capulets type deal. One from money, the other from the slums. One from a public school, the other from a private school. They often meet up in the school to keep their relationship secret. It isn't sexual yet, but that step is not far off. And then there's Beth. She's turned up to school to hang herself and be done with the world. Her childhood was tough. She's lonely, and the writer of the diary. As fate would have it, those chose the day to enter the school grounds at the same time and by chance stumble upon one another in the littered halls of the school. Luke and Sarah save Neil from Tom from his beating, but a torchlight from an ambiguous security guard and a voice that tells them all to leave now forces them to run together in a group and eventually find and hide out in the library, where they interrupt Beth preparing for her death. That sounded really weird. None of them realise this is what she was doing there, although it's been ransacked. Many of the books remain, and this saddens Beth that the world has evolved on from literature, and she tells them that this is her part of her disenchantment. And she says about the book, she says, this is people's voices. Tom tries the door, and they soon find that it's jammed, and they're all stuck inside. They try their phones, but there's no coverage. Wires have been cut outside, and bulldozers and wrecking balls are closing in. Today is the last day of demolition, well, before demolition is about to start. While this is all happening outside, the security guard searches for use. Our five main characters have to face their truths and lay their souls to bear with one another. Tom is pressured by his parents to succeed. Neil is nothing without his keyboard. Luke and Sarah aren't sure that their love is sustainable, although they want to be each other's first. And Beth, up until about an hour ago, would have been dead. They also find a half bottle of rum and they start to get loaded. Beth's plight all comes to bear when Neil finds her diary and reads aloud her entry. The fact one of them is prepared to end it all gets them questioning their own existence and immortality. Who are they really, individually? Where do they fit in the greater scheme of things? They show Beth compassion and slowly accept things and make amends with each other. There's music, singing, dancing, flirting, kissing, bravado and showmanship as they all cut themselves off a hunk of freedom afforded them in this natural territory. In the school, you can just be who you discover or you want to be. The anonymous security guard is heard listening to self-help tapes and repeating... Let's just chuck this in late. He's listening to self-help tapes and repeating positive life reaffirming mantras. So we'll get some cutaways to the security guard throughout, because otherwise we want to see what this guy's doing. The clock's ticking and Tom's had enough and says he'll go and get help. He ends up in the air conditioning duct. I want to do that again, which he falls through and is found by security. Security says he is in big trouble and asks if he's alone. He says he is protecting the others in the library. Security's insistence that he's to sit tight and then they have to leave right now, and Tom, usually selfish, escapes and returns to the others. Tom finds that the others having fun and forgets the warning. They agree that this will be their world now. They hang a flag and this will be the world to control, and everything outside can just be as it were. They'll meet here every weekend and from now on and just be buddies. And then a wrecking ball comes through the walls and the group are forced to flee for their lives. Beth is set to stay behind. A wall starts to cave in and she's ready to die, but instead she sees her diary and dives for it instead. She doesn't want her voice lost. Tom reaches for her and takes her hand, and the school starts to be demolished around them in a crazy action sequence. They find their way out of the ruin and to safety. They all lay in a heaving heap on the grass. They laugh. They were lucky. The security guard approaches them. We finally see him. It's John Bender from the first movie. Yes. Judd Nelson reprising his role. He tells them all to move along with a wry smile. They all agree to stay in touch and set up a group chat on Messenger. Neil sets it up, and when the others look at their phones, their name comes up as The Breakfast Club. As they say their goodbyes, we hear a new diary entry from Beth. This one is slightly more optimistic about life. Bender crosses the oval for the last time. He pauses, looks around, getting ready to fist pump the air. Beth beats him to it. Freeze frame, cool music, credits.
Yes.
Nice.
Nice ending. So you can't leave that fist pump alone.
No, I like. I mean, if I'm going to do a sequel-y thing, I think I'll throw in a few little
You have to throw back to it.
Yeah, and I think because the security guard thingy, because there's no principle, so I wanted to put a threat in there.
Yeah.
So something that was trying to get them out of the building, and they're trapped in there, and then they kind of like it in there, and they create like their own world, kind of
like the fact that it's a world that's about to be destroyed.
Yeah, but they don't know that. They just think this is it. This is where we're all going to stay together every Saturday.
And even before you know that it's going to be destroyed, kind of a world that's dead.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like a world that's...
And it's a library where the
like
books
a teenage
still...
wasteland.
Yeah. Which basically, and when she talks about the books, like people's voices are lost, like why is everyone scattered here, and when her diary's going to be lost.
And I like how you entered with her and exited with her. That's really nice.
Yeah.
The book and everything, and the same, using a similar but not the same idea as Brian's.
Well, I did pinch that because I think it's a nice way in.
Yeah, it's a great way to bookend it in a new way. That's really nice.
I mean, there's I played some safe elements to it. I mean, I did throw in people like Bender and that. I did bookend it. I did use the suicide thing as an avenue to go through.
Yeah.
But I just figured that for a modern audience, say it's me taking my daughters and say they hadn't seen the film, we can all... I always talk about these sequels where you can all link together, like The Force Awakens with Star Wars. It's like, give me a little bit and give something new to me.
Yes.
And anyone else that's watching it for the first time gets to sort of watch it and go, oh, I wonder what that is, and then they might go back and watch the other one. It's like giving everyone a little bit, like a little taste of it.
Yeah.
Sticking to that idea or the concept of those characters, because I think inherently... it works as that boxed-in, bottled-in concept.
Yeah, definitely.
And, I mean, obviously, even with Tom's character, I mean, I just sort of said, bullying his dad, I'd probably change all that. If I rewrote that, I wouldn't even stick to that cliche that he's bully. It could be something to do with his mother, or it could be something else in his life. I just thought, a bully chasing a young, nerdish guy, I like that sequence where you get to see the school when they run through it as a tracking shot.
Yeah.
And we get to see, oh, wow, that's where they were when they were doing that, and that's what happened there. That's like one of those
another
scenes.
way to do
a little nod, Yeah,
that's cool.
So, I think hopefully it works. But
yeah, it does. That's
I would
nice.
like to see it. I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about the difference in... Because there's a definite difference in tone between your two stories. And I feel like Jane's sits more in... Like, cinematically, it would sit more in a real world, and yours would be just slightly heightened, maybe.
Yeah.
Especially when there's, like, a bit of action sequence and things like that. And I mean heightened in the way that John Hughes would heighten it. Without being not going so far as to be campy or anything like that, but just ever so slightly bumped up a little bit.
But just remember, like there's a sequence where they're all trying to leave and they're running around and they're going to get out. So there's that element of
he's going through.
He's going through. So there's a bit of that action. The only thing is the wrecking ball is like the world crashing and it's the end of it. I mean, I played with that because I thought it's kind of cool to be a threat outside that they don't know that's internal.
Yeah.
And then
it's a good metaphor for kids' lives anyway.
Yeah.
Where they just encounter threats that they have no control over that they didn't know were there.
Yeah. And then
they're not really being looked after. That idea of
the kind of false sense of security that they get, where they go, man, we're tough now. We're teams. We're in charge. Oh, shit.
Well, it's like we're top of the world. We own this joint now, and I liked all of that having ownership.
And there's something kind of beautifully sad about them claiming ownership of a dead space.
Yeah,
and just going like, we're defiantly owning this. It's like nobody else wants it. It's like, we're like that's a beautiful.
But it's taking ownership of something as well that gets taken away from you.
Yes,
and they're kind of like laying on the grass, going, oh, "This is the end." And then the guy's like, "Well, we can still have our own little building and be together if we just all messenger each other." And that's kind of the world's like. That's how we communicate a lot now, anyways, in these messenger
and
groups.
Connection.
And it's a beautiful way of saying you can have the things you're looking to have. You won't necessarily get them in the way you expect.
Yeah,
but there are other ways you can get them if you're willing to explore. That's a really nice. That's a really nice kind of theme.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Oh, so you're last.
I can see it. I can see it.
I'm interested to see how mine sits into this because so mine's a spin-off sequel and it's called Mr. Bender.
Okay, all right, okay. Oh,
so Mr. John Bender gets out of his car in a lonely car park and walks up the stairs of Shermer High School. He stops and stares up at the sign. Something is missing in him, and the sign makes him sad. He wanders into the school. He sits at his desk in his office marking papers until he hears shuffling beyond the office and grins a wide grin. They're here. He goes to the Shermer Library. Seen in front of him are 4 misfits. It's Saturday detention, and Bender grins like a child. He makes them feel comfortable, says he doesn't mind what they do, what they did to get in here. What matters is what they do now. He tells them they can do whatever they like, as long as it's quiet and they don't leave the library. And if anything, this is a chance for them to get to know each other. We're all in this together, he says. Today might even change your life. And he fist punches the air. Sure, they say, smiling and nodding. They find him awkward, but harmless. He gets a sense of this and leaves them be. As the hours pass and Mr. Bender checks in on the kids, he hopes to catch them in hijinks or trying to sneak out or arguing or flirting, but every time he checks in, they're not doing any of that. They're on their phones or reading, some of them are doing homework. Mr. Bender makes it his mission to make sure this is a proper Saturday detention experience. He brings them snacks from vending machines, leaves the TV out surreptitiously so they can sneakily watch movies if they want. He leaves the audio room doors open if they want so they can listen to music, but they don't do any of this. They're even starting to get sick of his interruptions. He's being kind of pathetic. Sensing their growing derision, Bender explains to the kids that this is a great opportunity being here, more than they realise, but they're not interested. He says he knows from experience. He was in a lot of detentions. They ask about what he did to get there. Suddenly they're interested, so he tells them, and soon they're all laughing together at all the badass stuff he did when he was a teenager. And Mr. Bender's at the centre of the group, telling stories, and they think he's the coolest old dude in the world. Way better than the other teachers. What a badass he was when he was younger. And Bender is loving it. He hasn't felt this way in 30 years. It's like being back in that special Saturday club. He starts asking about them and soon realises there's actually a fifth kid that he didn't know was there. The other kids ignored him because he's such a loser. None of them even know who he is, but he's actually been sitting in a sort of separate corner of the library this whole time. Bender goes and finds him, tries to talk to him, but the loner kid, named Jeremy, is as down on himself as the rest of them are. They're laughing at him, saying he belongs in the corner by himself. Good riddance. And they ask Bender, Mr. Bender, come back so you can share more stories. But Bender feels terrible. He's been basking in nostalgia while this kid's being ignored and bullied. He asks the kids to get back to their work or whatever they were doing and says he has to go back to his office. And he sits in his office having a think. He looks at a photo of himself from the records. Definite badass. He misses that. Then he catches a photo of Vernon, the old vice principal, and he gets an idea. Bender goes back to the library and he's suddenly in grumpy, angry mode. He tells the kids to stop doing anything, separates them, makes fun of them, and right when they're saying, "What the hell, sir?" thinking he's a total arsehole, he calls Jeremy to the main area, tells him he's the worst of all, tells him he just read his file and knows all about his reputation, and he set off fire alarms and skipped school and tortured a kid with wrestling tape and bought a flare gun in his locker, and that's why he's got detention, and because he knows he's going to be a horrible influence. Jeremy, you're going to come with me, he says, back to my office because I'm going to sort you out, little shit. So Jeremy's completely confused, but he follows Mr. Bender to the office. The other kids watch him go, and suddenly they're kind of impressed with Jeremy's secret reputation. At his office, Bender tells Jeremy the plan. He says, "I'm going to trap you in a closet and set you up as a badass. And the kids in there will argue, and they'll try to test you, but if you keep this up, they'll eventually respect you, and they'll let you join the group, and you'll have just an awesome time, and you'll get an awesome rep in the school." Jeremy's like, "Well, that won't work." So Bender tells him, if he does this right, it'll be like a big sort of screw you to the world. And Jeremy's like, "What, like a fist pump in the air?" And Bender's like, "Yeah." And then Jeremy's like, "What, is that how you did it?" And Bender's like, "Well, no, mine was more like a middle finger, to be honest, but, you know, you're better than that." Jeremy considers this, like, slightly impressed, he guesses. He agrees to the plan. So Jeremy goes back to the group, and with Bender's help, yelling at him, telling him off, telling the other kids he's a bum and a loser, they convince the other kids Jeremy is a badass delinquent. But then Jeremy starts to get too comfortable. He starts to relax. He starts to let details of his real life slip. And the other kids start to suspect he's faking, and they get really pissed. And they want proof that he's for real. They start bullying him, interrogating him. And he almost admits it's all a lie when Mr. Bender steps in and tells them he's had enough. He's not going to let these kids go and sneak out and find some drugs in a locker or something. "Jeremy, you're coming with me. I'm separating you no matter what happens. You're not coming back into this room," he says. And then he puts Jeremy in locks him in a closet. Then he goes back to his office and checks on the kids, who are now chatting surreptitiously amongst themselves. He smiles and returns to his office and closes the door. Then he waits for hours and hours. For a long time, nothing happens. Then he hears a big clang and rushes into the library to ask about the ruckus. The kids deny there was a ruckus. They say they don't know what ruckus he's talking about. He says he knows they're lying, plays it up, and then leaves. Then he's waiting in his office again, and he hears loud music blaring from the library. Then a lot of silence, and he smiles, a little sadly. However long later, he wakes up. He's been lying on his desk, he's fallen asleep. He wakes up to the sound of kids leaving, and he goes out into the hall and sees them walking out. They're just strutting on out. He tells them off. He's like, "Where are you going?" And Jeremy's like, "It's past 5 o'clock and you can get stuffed." And for a moment, Bender's wondering if this is real, and his scowl falters. And he yells that he hopes they had a really great Saturday, and then they say it was shit and he can go shove it. And he's confused until all 5 kids walk down the stairs together, silhouetted, and Jeremy raises a fist in the air and throws Bender the finger. And Mr. Bender smiles, says, "Don't you forget about me," plays, and he walks back into his office, sits at his desk, and keeps marking papers.
Character study.
Yeah.
Character study.
So I didn't know how to do all 5 characters, so what I did was I made it a walk down memory lane for one of them.
Yeah.
And about him trying to relive the past, and then realising that was quite selfish.
Yeah.
So he tried to help in like what I think is actually
In a John Bender way.
kind of a like a
He
dumb.
liked to do grease the opposite way.
Kind of, yeah, in kind of a
Without
dumb
the
way that
flying car.
Yeah.
I don't think it's actually good for this Jeremy kid what he did for him, but I kind of like the idea
Yeah,
that he did it.
Well, yeah, I
because
think
his intentions
I think in a
are good.
redraft there would be an elemental change of slightly what he does, but I think I love the fact that he says all the classics. He's like the flare gun.
Yes.
I just
So
love
he's
that.
trying to,
Ruckus.
he's really
If
pushing.
you're watching that movie as a fan,
Yeah.
then he's like, then you put a flare gun. Everyone will be listening and go, and you know what's coming next.
And exactly,
yeah.
and like the whole point of that is,
Which I like. I like
I'm,
that.
I'm so obviously dropping in those things,
Yeah.
but I'm making you go, yeah, that's kind of dumb.
Right.
But
it's
you're dropping
cool
him in
because
good
it's dumb.
spots.
I'm dropping them, but I'm dropping
Yeah.
them in a way
Yeah.
which I think endears us to the character.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We want that stuff to be back,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
at the
yeah.
same
Yeah.
time, we know it's not probably healthy for us to
No.
want those
Oh,
back.
it's always good.
We should leave them in the past, but we still want them, and it's like that.
But it's where you use them.
yeah,
and
Like
it's,
the
it's
bird
where you
fist.
used it.
The flipping the bird.
Well,
Yes.
but that
Yeah.
also
That's
the
like
punch
you
to
go-
the
I like
air.
that, yeah.
And then it just does a roof finger
That's
instead,
great.
and then that's
Because
how
that's
he
what it is.
like. And I like that idea that Jeremy's still kind of that's Jeremy going, "No, dude, like I acknowledge what you've done for me,
Yeah.
but I have to keep playing this part now," like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
and I'm not sure if it would last, and he probably would just.
But he kind of
a week
created
later-
him. It's like Frankenstein's monster,
Exactly,
and he got what he
exactly
wanted
right.
at the end.
So I kind of like,
Yeah, I like
but and then that's how Bender accepts that. And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's what I was like. Cool, like that's great."
But that's
like,
what he wanted.
exactly.
Yes.
He wants him to come back against the
And
system.
Jeremy has this quality of all of the previous, like
Kind
he's
of,
got the basket
and I
case.
do feel like the other
the
characters
brain.
who I kind of ignored in my pitch,
Yeah,
like
because
they
you don't
would
need 'em
they
now,
would
yeah.
have
Resemble.
depth to them
Yeah.
and that kind of thing.
Would they resemble the cast in any way? Is there,
Very possible.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I reckon you'd make them polar opposites
Yeah,
because
okay.
and like polar opposites and give them intentionally not that many issues, and I think make them
And
boring.
Jeremy has all the.
And then Jeremy has more of the issues,
Yeah.
and basically their issue is that they're like, oh, they're the audience almost, and we're
Yeah.
just like, oh, Bender, you're so great, man, you're such a cool old dude. I mean, you're still an old dude, but you're very cool.
Yeah.
Tell us
Yeah.
about it. And it's like it's almost like they're the monster in us that wants to feed on nostalgia
Mm-hmm.
and just reminisce. But there's a point where Bender has to realise that that's fine, but it's not healthy to just do that.
Yeah.
Because you get kids like Jeremy who get forgotten and who
Yeah.
have their lives
Yeah.
to lead and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So I feel a bit bad that I didn't do anything to do with any of the serious issues of suicide and things like
Oh,
that.
look, I
I
just
just
put-
dealt with nostalgia, but I think that was me
Yeah,
trying to
it's
be
fair.
meta. Like,
But,
I'm
but you
being
could,
a bit meta.
but you could have had that in your other four characters. You didn't
Yeah,
really
that's
discuss
true.
them, so
That's
one of
true.
them could have been facing something like that. I think, like even when we say Brian,
That's true,
Brian
but
is
I
the
want to
brain.
undercut those. Do you
Yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean?
But what I'm saying is, when we say Brian is the brain, so I
Yeah.
took that element of that character
Yeah.
of being like brain really smart and made him like an online troll smart.
Yeah,
So I was
yeah,
like
sure.
someone that's really good with
Push
computers.
him.
Yeah,
Because I'm like, okay,
yeah.
he's still smart, but he's also a bit of an asshole because
Yeah.
he can manipulate
Yeah.
in his and he's technically bullying the guy.
Well, that's
Yeah,
what would
so-
happen to
Yeah.
Ryan now. I think
Yeah.
he would be able to troll and feel good about himself.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
But it's also what we think people are smart nowadays can be just tech smart as well as which
Yes.
will be my other pitch. But yeah, it's look, I think
Yeah,
character
I enjoyed
studies are
that.
great. You know,
Yeah, yeah. Thanks. No,
Netflix original.
It was an interesting.
Yeah.
It was an interesting. That's why I admire yours, both of you guys, because I didn't feel like I could accomplish that. And it may have just been because I went so far down a particular road, didn't
I
feel
know
like
how
it was
you
working,
feel,
and I kind of
yeah.
felt like I'd run out of time. But I still, yeah. I mean. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why that. I don't know why I went down that road and why that appealed to me.
oh, well, I think
Yeah.
I think I played the safest out of all of us. I think you guys like yours was a straight up sequel, literally like the next day,
next
which
day.
is
Yeah,
is
see, but
always
to
tough,
me, that
dangerous.
would be, that's
like
like
hard.
the hardest thing to do.
Oh hell yeah!
But I still think yours is hard. Yours is like
Same.
an admission of what's come before, an admission of distance from it.
yeah.
And
And
it's
then an
going
attempt to
outside.
both do something new and reconnect.
Yeah,
which
well,
is kind of what mine does,
yeah.
but in a
But yours is a
sideways
character.
way.
Yours is a character study. So
Yeah,
yours
yeah.
is like it's chosen one character to focus on, and you played with some of the tropes and that in there, but and some of the character arc that Bender's got. But you've done it really well to how he got that guy involved and how he plays against characters, and he kind of got what he wanted at the end, which is the guy to give him the finger. So there's
Yes.
like those. I mean. That standalone film as itself, like
Yeah.
even if you didn't have John Bender and you tweak that,
Mm-hmm.
people would
that's
like
true.
that.
As,
Like,
as a film on its own,
Yeah.
kind of like an homage to a Breakfast Club.
It's
Yeah.
good to see John.
Yeah, that's true.
we just
Yeah,
don't
I
even
could do
need Joe.
that.
Like, and people would go, if you tweaked
didn't
enough
have
of
to
that,
be a Breakfast Club.
no,
No.
if you tweaked
Yeah,
enough of
that's
that
true.
and saw one guy who was and showed a little bit of the principle, what he was like as a rapscallion back in
Yeah.
the day,
Yeah.
you don't even need to link it to the Breakfast
Yeah,
Club,
that's
which
true.
is it does. Whereas mine is. And James, I think both of ours are
They're
pretty
direct.
much throwing in the Breakfast Club
Yeah.
and saying
Yeah.
this is the. Whereas James gone, this is 2 days later. I'm going.
Yeah.
This is what I think the Breakfast Club would be like now.
Yeah.
Like what kids would be part of the
And,
club.
and
yes.
none of the what's good about yours is something that was so important is being knocked down now.
And you know
It's
where
not important.
yeah, and you know
It's
where
not.
that
That's
comes.
such a beautiful. I love it
Yeah.
when sequels acknowledge that something is done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you
And
know
I
and
like
know
it
where I
if-
got the influence
But it
from that
has such
was
significance.
Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom.
Yeah.
Because
with the
when they
island-
destroy the island, and I
Yeah.
thought that's a bold move
Yeah.
because who the hell would go back to that island over and over and over again
No.
anyway? It's just
Yeah.
madness.
Yeah, they've
but
ended that.
when they ended the island, I was like, that is opening up the world
heartbreaking.
huge. Because if I was to do a sequel after mine now, say that it's gone, the school, so where do they go?
Yeah.
Like they don't have that safety of the school
No.
anymore. They'll be thrown, they've got Messenger,
Yeah.
that's it. So where would you go with your character?
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
That's
Because I had him stuck in kind of the purgatory.
Which I
of
love,
relive.
yeah.
But, obviously he's gone away, something's happened, he's come back, he's trying to relive something, maybe like whatever he did, but he's come back, he's become a teacher.
Yeah.
And I think like there's part of him that is richer and is like, oh, I'm going to try and give back, I'm going to try.
Yeah.
But he has this inbuilt thing of like, but I'm still being a bit selfish with it, kind of like a lesser evil version of Vernon.
But it's great that he's become kind of the Vernon, he is that role
Exactly.
model, that person.
Yeah.
That's what he basically realizes that he needs to be a bit evil or whatever. But I like the idea that it's still what I'm doing is I like you say, character study. He's the empty one kind of thing. So there's still the building's still there. It's all still there,
yeah.
but it doesn't mean anything anymore
right.
because the people that he shared it with have moved on, and he tries to recreate that.
But he's
I
almost
like the
to a
fact
degree become Vernon that he's had 20 years of maybe being a teacher, and he's kind of lost that flavour as well.
Yeah.
And he's kind of self-reflected like with the janitor does to him. He's actually reflected with himself and gone, I can help these people.
And and the fact that he kind of uses, I like the adults' relationship with kids in our pictures, and how I think there's very particular choices that you have to make with the kind of adults you put around these characters. You don't want adults who are just going to destroy them, but you need adults that are going to challenge them and be as immature, if not more immature than them at times, and misuse their adult power.
Yeah.
And I like the challenge of having Bender misuse his adult power in a way that was totally understandable.
Yeah.
And like when we go, dude, no, come on, no, what are you doing? Like, we don't hate him for it, but we're like, no, that's the wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
Which is what we said before, a lot of teachers do.
You have a lot more respect for the way he, might have used it. But then you look at the manipulation that still goes on from grown-ups, teachers, role models,
and that misuse of power. I think it's really interesting the way we're all making comments about misuse of power. Can I ask why both of you guys because it just pointed out to me, I'm like wondering why I didn't talk about suicide. Why was it the suicide aspect of the 5 potential kind of themes?
Because it's still such a problem.
Aha! So
so
that's for its weight in the real world.
For its weight in the real world, and the percentage of kids that think about suicide.
Yeah.
How has your life taken you to the darkest point so quickly? What can we do to help? Because you're worth.
And do you feel the first film did a lot for that?
I think it did, yeah. It really showed the pressure of an academic, who is only one thing, can only see one thing in him and can't see the value.
It's weird, when I first saw that film, I didn't consider his to be one of the main stories.
No.
I'm not sure. I don't like that's.
Because Bender and that are just so
I didn't know
polarising.
about suicide till I saw that. I didn't know.
Yeah. But then I equated the closest thing I can equate it to is Degrassi Junior High, when one of the characters does kill themselves. And we'd known that character for a long time through the series. I can't remember who it was.
Cho? No.
Yes,
Yeah,
I know
it's like a punky looking dude.
Yeah, he was with Caitlin.
Yeah, and then he killed himself in a toilet. But that episode is so hard to watch. It's so
and
intense.
It's the same feeling.
Yeah.
It's that darkness in a kid.
But this is a character we knew.
Yeah.
Like this, and to make a decision in any series, like think of like Neighbours and Home and Away and
Claude.
that. To think of a series like that where they would put someone to suicide is a risky decision.
Gosh, yeah.
Particularly a character that you like, because it's watching them slowly disintegrate as a character.
Yes.
And they did that very well in Degrassi, but I know that that's what every time it just keeps clicking to me between Brian and Degrassi, or to say Breakfast Club and Degrassi, because it has a very similar element of showing the human element of teenagers in there.
And how how scary they can be.
Yeah.
Not scary as in violent or destructive, but scary, well, like, oh shit, we're looking into their minds, and it's a scary place.
Everything from sexuality to suicide, to identity, to drugs and alcohol, to trying to be someone you're not.
To self-loathing.
To self-loathing.
It's almost, in a way, isn't it like they're almost like kind of, in a really metaphorical, symbolic way, they're like immortal pixie versions of our dark fears, because they're these innocent, supposedly innocent, fragile, just forming people, but inside of them they've got all the demons that we've got.
Yeah.
And like a lot of adults think, oh, we're the only ones who've lived and we're the only ones with demons, but young kids, they have a lot of struggles as well.
And it can be chemical as well. Like it can be, not just brought on by drugs, but just something that they might need help might need to be medicated. It can be mental illness that just needs a little bit of medication.
Well, I mean, I could Beth, even with Beth's character, just to, obviously because of the suicide link in mind, but you could go into mental illness. You could take the element and go, you know what, I don't want to go to suicide, I'm going to go to maybe the mental illness side and use that character.
Can I ask something about tone? So the tone of Breakfast Club to me is very much fairly evenly comedy and drama / tragedy. Fairly evenly spread, maybe not tragedy, but drama definitely. In a way that means that the comedy highlights the tragedy and the tragedy kind of flips back onto the comedy in a nicely realistic way, which kind of acknowledges that in real life when things are sad, we do make jokes. Which is classic
of school kids.
Yes, exactly right. As part of a coping mechanism, things like that. Where do you guys think your pictures sit in terms of tone? Like, how much are they comedies versus dramas? Like, yours felt like, Jane, that it would be a drama with comedy in it.
It would.
So there would be comedy, like moments of character comedy, but what's happening is dramatic.
Very dramatic.
And the events are dramatic.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
because it
doesn't feel like there'd be any dance montages necessarily.
No.
Maybe near the end or something, but not really.
I would do my best to squeeze one in, Sonny. I would do my best. With all the respect that the seriousness has.
But yeah, so does that what is that what you would say for yours? Like,
it'd be a lot of dark comedy.
Okay.
And obviously it's it's hard because I don't know if I'd said it. I don't know. I want it to be set in the 80s, but would it work? We're revisiting
I think
a sequel.
It would. I think
people like
I'm
that.
thinking of Freaks and Geeks. I'm thinking of Freaks and Geeks, which is set in 1980 or
the
81
cast,
or something.
though,
and like
honestly,
sitting it right in there.
Don't take offence, America, but I don't know if I'd be very careful about the casting. I would look at
so considering like recasting all those characters.
Yeah.
Okay,
I feel like I feel like yours could only work if it had been.
Yeah, that's I feel like that.
Yeah.
I feel like
that's what I like.
And that's
about
how I see.
Yeah.
That's how I see.
I agree. I think if you get away the chemistry of Judd Nelson and all that, and you get new people, it'll just annoy everyone.
I just don't think.
And in the expanding of the world, you need the original characters to hold that initial idea.
Yeah, it's recasting 5 characters
in America that could play.
That's why I
so
like Chuck Bender in that in as a security guard.
Yeah.
It's like he's in there, but he's not really in it. He's
what's your balance?
I think I tried to keep the same element. I mean, even though it's sort of there's some dark shit happening in it, I tried to keep it pretty much even keel. Because I write horror and comedy anyway, so I would just be finding elements, put a lot of humour in there. I think when you put people together, there's going to be funny moments.
Because to me, it feels like there's more hijinks in yours.
Yeah, of course.
There's more 80s.
Yeah.
But the hijinks is kind of... So the hijinks kind of just goes... It just unapologetic kind of jumps at you. But you know that as that's happening, the reason it's happening is dramatic.
Yeah.
Well, they find a bottle of rum and they
muck
around and drink.
Yeah,
they've got death.
And I think that's definitely is very... Like, that's what the Breakfast Club originally was,
I mean, John talking to Claire when he's talking about what he thinks, her parent... Like, he talks to her about her experience and she's crying and on edge and, that idea is quite gritty and without John it isn't gritty. I think, that element of really deep conversation needs to happen again, like where... Because he's bullying her and he's almost... it's
very aggressive.
It's harassment.
Flirting,
it's
basically.
sexual harassment.
It is, but it is.
Like it's aggressive, predatory flirting.
Exactly.
It is. But when you make films in that, you have to go down those roads.
Yeah, of
because
course,
if we play it safe and we go, we can't have characters that speak to women like that, or we can't have someone
you've got
is
to
racist. You have to put those characters in because otherwise,
it happens though.
That's right.
It happens online now.
That's
what's
terrible.
tricky to me is that you need to put those things in, but you need to have an awareness in your filmmaking and storytelling of how to express where the film is saying they land.
Yeah.
So you can't have characters being sexist and then have people
and getting away with it.
Sexism is great. You can't have the film agreeing with them, but you can have the film presenting them.
But we don't get that in the Breakfast Club because when we watch it, we kind of go, like you do feel uncomfortable the way he speaks during that. Back then, people would have gone, "That's just a guy talking."
No, but you do get the other people do go like, "Whoa, he's really ripping into her, and he shouldn't be doing this." So I think we get an acknowledgement for most of the things that could be controversial or sexist or prejudice in the film. I think mostly we get acknowledgement from the other characters and from the film in general that it's not about exploiting anybody, and that is the character's flaw coming out.
Yeah.
And so we're commenting on flaw. The only exception is what we briefly spoke about in the first half of the episode regarding the Grease-like makeover.
Yeah.
Good
excellent,
alert,
good
team.
pictures, guys.
Yes, I
that was
enjoyed
really
that.
good. I was like I said,
scared. It's one
I was
of my
struggling.
favourites.
I was struggling because of the type of story it is. I was like, I don't know where I'm going to go with this.
Yeah, same.
And I'm really impressed to see how much depth you guys got out of it. It's really
Yeah,
Well, I
Same,
think
same.
I like the fact that we all went in different directions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's nice to go, oh, wow, that's
Especially,
what they
I
were
think this is
thinking.
one of the first pictures that we've done on here that wasn't. Besides, so this is our second John Hughes film, but it's our second John Hughes
This
film.
is more serious.
But yeah, something
Yeah.
that's more, more dramatic.
Deals with
most of the
more
other things
serious.
we've done have been fantasy, or kind of at least
Comedy.
high concept or comedy.
We got to be
that's very cool.
adulty.
We
Like,
did.
Yeah.
Look at
And
us.
deal with
Look at
some
us,
serious
hey?
issues.
All
Yeah.
grown up.
And that is it for part 2 of our Breakfast Club episode. Thank you once again to my guests Ryan Woosnam and Jane Raitt. Tune in again next week for our pitching challenge from this episode, which involves a plastic fashion icon. And in the meantime, feel free to check out more episodes on Podbean, iTunes and Facebook. And remember that kindness can be critical.